Hi, my name's Nigel Abbott and welcome to Fundsition. The purpose of today's video is to be able to demonstrate to you the process and the criteria that is involved for raising capital through crowdsourced funding legislation and, more importantly, through our platform, Fundsition. The crowdsourced funding legislation came about in December 2017, and to date there are about 10 licences given out. Now, to have a licence, you have to have an Australian Financial Services licence granted, which allows you to operate an intermediary platform that brings businesses and investors together. So this new channel of funding for your business is really a very exciting opportunity, and it's done in a very efficient and cost-effective manner. It's great for investors because they can invest in businesses that actually mean something to them and care about. So we focus on what we call established SMEs that are looking for growth capital. So over the next decade, we're going to see a material shift in business ownership in Australia, as a large percentage of Australia's established SMEs are owned by baby boomers and Gen Xers. And of course, they're keen for investment to grow their business. They want to accelerate and maximise the value of their business so it can reach its full potential. Therefore, crowdsourced funding, or what we will term as equity crowdfunding, really provides a very viable option for them. So crowdsourced funding snapshot, well, SMEs can raise up to $5 million per annum. Can you believe that? $5 million per year. Now, retail investors, and this is the game changer, because prior, under Section 708, you could really only raise capital through sophisticated investors. But the game changer is retail investors can now invest in your business, but they can't invest more than $10,000 per company or per issuer per annum. Certainly no restrictions for sophisticated investors, and a very exciting change is that you can advertise. That's right, you can go out and market your raise, and of course foreign investment is allowed. So quickly, here is our Fundsition business model. So ideally we drive brand awareness through marketing and media. Education is critical, just like this video for you as an SME. We do the same sort of thing through investor education. Quite often, our SMEs come through our channel partners, and to give an example, they're accountants or business advisors. So then what happens is you go through a process, which we will talk about in a little bit more detail, to be able to recognise, is your business the right fit for crowdsourced funding? We then go through a vetting and compliance process. You go onto the platform, and that gives you an opportunity to then raise funds or raise capital through retail investors as well as sophisticated investors, and as I said before, foreign investors. Now obviously those investors are looking for a return on their investment. So ideally, this capital that will come into your business is going to help drive the valuation of your business, to increase the revenue and drive the valuation. So let's have a look at SMEs. And as I said, you could raise up to $5 million per annum. But here are a couple of the key criteria. Your business needs to be under $25 million revenue, and it has to have under $25 million of net tangible assets. There needs to be a 2 director minimum, and a majority of them are residing in Australia. You need to be able to publish financial and directors' reports. Annual financial reports are audited when you raise more than $3 million in crowdsourced funding capital, and that's collectively. So you could do $1 million this year, $1 million the next, $1 million the following. So once you hit the $3 million mark, well, then you need to be able to provide audited accounts to your shareholders. Up to 50 non-employee and non-CSF shareholders, unlimited employee and CSF shareholders. Restricted related party transactions, or therefore having shareholder approval. So these things really provide good governance. It's not complicated, and it's also open to proprietary limited companies. Okay, now here's a really exciting way to look at crowdsourced funding. So importantly, your staff, suppliers, channel partners, customers can easily invest. Now, to give you an example, a coffee roaster, they need to raise around $1.5 million to put in a new roasting machine. Now, they know that by putting in that machine, they're going to be able to increase the supply because the demand is there, and all of a sudden, they have a great opportunity to be able to increase the revenue and the valuation of the business. So who would you go to first? Well, you could go to all of the cafes that buy your beans and give them an opportunity to invest your business. But also all of those loyal customers that love your coffee could invest in your business, as well as some of the other suppliers. So a good way to look at it is firstly, well, who are my customers, who are my suppliers, and give them an opportunity to invest into the business. So let's just say, for example, you had a couple of hundred lifetime customers and they all put $2,000 to $3,000 in. Well, that's potentially $1 million in equity capital. So Fundsition, our mandate is we are industry agnostic, so we're open to all industries. But we do look for established SMEs that have a track record. So we don't really play in the startup space. And they have to be sort of turning over a revenue of somewhere $2 to $20 million. And it's all about requiring growth capital. It's really important that the sector is easily understood by these potential retail investors. Now, obviously, the coffee example I gave you is a very easy one to understand. You get more into complex medical devices and biotech, it probably becomes a little bit too complicated and maybe not ideal for crowdsourced funding. Now, the capital injection, it has to have an impact on increasing the EBITDA. That's very important because there needs to be a lift in the valuation of the business. The other thing we look at is, does this business have a good exit opportunity? So will the investors make a return and have an exit on the money they've invested over time? Please keep in mind that, we make sure that we educate investors that it is patient capital. So the process is largely conducted and executed on the platform. So we've built out a very robust back-end system, and it starts with you going in and filling out our expression of interest form, and that's the first step of the process. I'll go into a little more detail. The goal is to reduce the raise cycle to a minimum so an SME can get on with the business. So once you've been through the whole process and it goes live, it's normally around a 45-day process where you raise on the platform. As I said, the raise can be advertised and marketed through any channel. You just have to state facts, okay? The funding process allows the SME to really get its house in order. All of those important things when you're taking on new shareholders and the business is growing. We also provide additional online education to support both yourself, an SME, and an investor. Now, this is the process here. Don't be overwhelmed. It's actually quite simple. So an SME comes in through the website, they fill out an expression of interest, part 1, part 2 is sent to them, which is a little bit more comprehensive. We then do an internal review through our investment committee, and we decide, yes, this is a good company, it has potential, and then the idea is they put a pitch together to the investment committee. From there, we then review it and we say, yep, we want to move forward with this, and they're happy to move forward. Then there's a process of legal and financial due diligence. Now, once again, in the back-end system, we demonstrate all the things that we require that you have to provide. So there's actually no cost through this process. It's only when you get through the legal and financial due diligence. And remember, we're an intermediary platform and we are gatekeepers for ASIC, and we are also gatekeepers for the investor. So at this point, if you get through the due diligence, which you should, then it's time for a hosting agreement, and that's the agreement between your business and us for raising capital on the platform. You then need to develop an offer document, and this is the key document that an investor has to read and acknowledge before they make an investment. Now, we have a back-end process to help you build this, or you can work with your accountant and use our back-end system to help build this out. It's not overly complicated, but it is the minimum requirement that ASIC need, Australian Securities Investment Commission, that they require. After you've been through that process, it gets signed off by one of our responsible managers. We'll obviously work with you to make sure that it's all correctly completed and submitted, so that it's in the required form that we need. Once the RM is satisfied, we develop a marketing campaign to launch your offer. We have legal sign-off on the document. It then goes to a graphic designer to make sure it looks slick, and then there's just a final check by the RM, and then your company directors need to consent. At that point, it then goes on to the website. We build out a company profile on you so that we can showcase. Video is very, very important for this, and think about the video as 2 to 3 minutes, and that's your executive summary. So then what happens is that goes onto the website with all the other information and the offer doc, and then we push that out to the investor base. Now, if you had some suppliers and customers, we could do an expression of interest before it goes live to gauge interest. And from there, once we did go live, we would contact those people first to give them first opportunity to invest in your company. So the fee structure is fairly simple. The platform fee is around 7%, and we do charge 8% if you want to put a percent towards our charity. Marketing campaign fee, well, that'll normally be around $5,000 plus. So it really just depends on, how many customers potentially invest, or, how much money do we think we need to be able to go and push this out into the marketplace. So it's obviously paid advertising. Due diligence process, well, that's going to be based upon how much work you can do, or how much work you and your accountant can do with the due diligence, and also the offer doc development process. So, we say $5,000 is the minimum. Sometimes it could be less than that, but sometimes it could be more than that. Let's just have a quick look at the investor market. So in Australia, if you actually think about it, these types of unlisted investments have really only been, accessible by the wealthy. And, typically with investment today, Main Street investment, it's really equities, listed equities, bonds, cash and property have really absorbed most of the investment dollars. So, the other crowdsourced funding platforms, a lot of them are focused on early stage ventures, which tend to have a higher risk. Whereas I explained to you before, we are focused more on, companies with a track record. So if you think about the retail investor, and we'll include self-managed super fund trustees in this, because in the self-managed super fund trustee section, there's around $750 billion, and there's around 25% in cash, and that just shows you that capital hasn't been deployed. So there's a big opportunity to be able to showcase these deals to self-managed super fund trustees as well. So once again, retail investors can invest up to $10,000 into your business per annum, but they can actually invest in a multitude of investments. It's not restricted to just one. They can do a multitude, but only 10 per business. Self-managed super fund trustees are another opportunity. Sophisticated investors, there's no cap. As we said before, you can advertise. There's a 5-day cooling off period. So if an investor has made an investment but they don't feel comfortable, within that 5-day period, they can actually terminate and actually pull out of the investment. Now, if the minimum subscription isn't met, then the offer is unsuccessful and the funds go back to the investors. So let's say you were to raise $1 million, and that's your minimum subscription, but you're actually happy to go over that to 1.5. Or let's say ultimately you'd like $1 million, but you're happy to not happy, but your minimum you require is really 750,000. So that would be your minimum subscription is 750. And if that number is achieved, well, you'll access the funds. If it's not achieved, well, the funds go back to the investors. As I talked about before, Australia has the third largest superannuation pool in the world, and there's around 750 billion sitting in self-managed super funds. So there's a really good opportunity for self-managed super fund trustees to invest in these types of unlisted investments. Just quickly, this is how the process works. So obviously, an investor, they look at the website, and if they want to see more information, so they could view the video on your business and a little bit of information, but if they want more and want to go into the what we call the offer company profile page, which is really the whole section on your business, well, then they need to sign up, and that really is just giving us their name and email, and then acknowledging that they understand the risk, that they understand that investing is a risk, okay? From there, if they like it and they invest, well, there's obviously an application form, share application form, payment details are provided, and then there's a verification. There's a small fee for that because they have to go through a verification process, being individuals or entities like companies or a self-managed super fund, and there's a verification to ensure we meet the requirements around anti-money laundering. Then the payment is made. The share registry manages those payments that come in. They go and sit in a trust account, which isn't touched unless the minimum subscription is met. If that minimum subscription is met, the funds are released, and then the offer company or the issuer then receives those funds, and the investors receive a share certificate. It's very important that if you go through this process, that you connect with investors on a regular basis. Minimum should be every quarter to keep them engaged with what you're doing and to keep them updated. And as investors, if there are director changes or any critical changes that you have to notify ASIC with, well, you must also notify your investors. So don't think as an additional share register being a burden. Think of it as an opportunity, because if I've got an extra couple of hundred shareholders, I'm not necessarily losing control because I might have only given up 20% equity. But what I'm really doing is I've got all of those people out there that are spokespeople for my brand, for my business. So having an additional share registry not only supplies the capital you need, but they are also, advertisers, marketers for your business. And if you wanted to raise more capital into the future and your business is doing well, they would be the first people that we would go back to. So it gives this legislation and this process gives investors a real opportunity to invest in businesses they feel passionate about, and they can follow that growth journey with the business. And obviously, if the business succeeds and the share price increases, well, your investment crystallizes and potentially achieves an exit where you get a really good return on your investment. But with the general risk warning, there are no guarantees. But of course, there are no guarantees with any investment. So let's just sum this up. It's really an outstanding opportunity. It's really a new channel of funding that has come about through government legislation, so that that much needed growth capital required for SMEs is now available, and it's available through platforms like ours. But we believe at Fundsition that with our focus on more established businesses, we're in a much better position to potentially provide a return on investment back to the investors. Thank you very much.